Hello and welcome in. We're just going to take a moment to let people filter into our webinar. So I threatened Monica here with reciting some frost poetry because it's all nice and snowy outside, but I won't do that today. Okay, so happy holidays. Welcome to our final Grade Decision Intelligence Demand Trends webinar of the year. We're so glad that you've joined our quote unquote winter wonderland of data today. So don't be shy with your questions. Feel free to deck those halls of our Q&A and chat boxes at the bottom of your screen. Since we do have a packed house, we'll get through as many as we can before the session ends. Today, we're focusing on the gift of growth, academic program evaluation for higher education. If you miss anything, don't worry. We'll be delivering the slides and the recording to your inbox all in one night, just like Santa. Now, to kick off our session, I'm handing the mic over to our very own Decision Intelligence head elf, the founder of Gray, and the best-selling author of Start, Stop, or Grow, Bob Atkins.
Hi, Marianne, and thank you very much for the introduction. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking time off before the holidays to come and hear about what's going on in higher education and in particular around demand. Today, we'll not only share general trends, we'll give you a 12 nights of Christmas or 12 programs of interest before you head off for the holidays. In particular, some blasts from the past where we had identified emerging programs in our 5 emerging programs webinars, and we'll share a little bit about what those were and how they've done. All of which is to say we're doing another one of those in January. So you can find out about programs that are just starting to emerge from the soup of science, business, and technology, and potentially pose significant opportunities for higher education. So without further ado, let's take a look at what's going on this time. First, just by way of introduction to Gray, we offer a program evaluation system as our primary service, and that's what we'll walk through today. What is a program evaluation system, you might well say? Well, it addresses markets. Are there jobs for graduates? Are there enough students interested in the program? What does competitions look like? Margins, what's the revenue, cost, and margin of departments, courses, programs, sections, professors, you name it? Academics, what are the DFW rates? Do students actually pass this course? How many people are retained and continue on to graduation? Are the students who take the course passing the professional exams, like the NCLEX exam that they may need to pass? So we take that into account in our systems as well. And finally, mission, which is intrinsically qualitative. And while we'll capture it in our systems, obviously that's not something that we can quantify. And I would say it's also very important to recognize that while we offer all sorts of data, we know that you can't make this decision on data alone. It requires judgment and participation. So the process that we run around the data is very important. You have to engage the right people in it. That usually runs down from the provost to the deans into chairs and sometimes faculty as well, depending on the size of the institution. They need the right information, which comes out of these systems and others that you may have. Then they need to apply their judgment to evaluate programs. And that's really the important part here. There's no formula to tell them what the answer is. You need people in a room discussing the program options, looking at the data, and making informed decisions about what to do. And then comes the hard part. You have to manage this on an ongoing basis. And this honestly is where I see a lot of program management processes fall apart. We do a one-time evaluation. Sometimes that's driven by the accrediting cycle, but we don't sustain that evaluation as time moves on. So our sections may be too large or too many. Our courses may not be adapted to market skill requirements, and our programs may be falling out of date, unbeknownst to us. So I think with the right tools, you can look at your programs and manage them on a much more frequent basis. I think a sensible interval is probably twice a year. And you don't look at everything twice a year, but you do check on things like student enrollment volumes and such, so you can make sure that you're ready for the next semester with the right number of professors and sections. So that's an overview of program evaluation. Now let's take a look at what some of the data that comes out of that is telling us about the market. First is Google Keywords. Let me take a moment and explain how to read the chart. The dark blue bar is 2023. the medium blue is 2024, and the light blue is 2025. In a perfect universe, those bars would go up from left to right, with 24 being higher than 23 and 25 being higher than 24. That is not what's happening right now. Google search volumes for higher education programs are down about 29%. Now, lest you fall out of your chair, let's back up a sec. There's a lot of change going on in the marketing world right now around searches. And AI search is very important and not yet counted in these numbers. We're working on ways to count it, but a lot of that decline is not a decline in interest in higher ed. In fact, all of it may simply be reflecting the shift from traditional Google search to AI search. So while we still report these numbers, do be careful. I wouldn't overinterpret them right now. You can see this steady downward trend month by month. I think that's probably most likely explained by the arrival of AI in searches. That said, there's no reason to believe that the search volumes aren't proportional. The decline isn't proportional. So a larger program with more search is probably of greater interest, although it may not. There may be more interest than the numbers say, but that should be evenly distributed across all the programs. What you can see is that healthcare led the pack in search volumes. We've got registered nursing at the top of the list. We actually have 3 different nursing programs on the page: nursing assistant, licensed practical nurse, as well as registered nurse. Then we have EMT paramedic with almost 300,000 searches, phlebotomy with 221,000, and medical assistant with 189,000 searches. And then we get to some things that are not healthcare. There are 4 of them. Cosmetology, huge program, going to have a lot of trouble with the new metrics around debt to graduation and high school wages because it's heavily tip oriented. So a lot of the compensation for cosmetologists doesn't show up in the statistics. We have commercial bus driver, welding tech, and culinary arts, all making our top 10 in terms of overall Google volume, which would suggest that these are among the most attractive programs for community colleges. This whole list is intended to pull certificates and programs that are at the 2-year level. Now, as we look at 4-year programs, and also these could be transfer programs out of a community college, we have a very different list. We have several things that don't easily fit into a given category. So economics, business administration, public administration, and law, all with over 200,000 searches. We have computer science and cybersecurity, more on the tech side. Cyber is one of these programs we watch every month, and every month it gets bigger. So it's very material there. Computer science is doing quite well too, though. We have a couple of health programs. Remember, our last list had 5. Now we're down to 2. Social work at 200, and public health at 163,000 searches. Education and early childhood education, both around 165,000 searches, round out our list. So now let's take a look at the data in a different way. What we've seen in the prior charts is unit growth. That is how many students are in, how many searches were there. What that tends to skew is towards things that are very large. Even if they're growing, they may be growing at a much slower percentage rate, but the actual numbers are higher. When you switch to percentages, what you're going to tend to emphasize is small programs that are growing rapidly. Now, we do drop off after we exclude anything with fewer than 10,000 searches a year to make sure we're not reporting what effectively is statistical noise. But it gives you a very different perspective on what's hot when you look at it on a percentage basis. Much to my surprise, 3D modeling and design tech leads the list with a 300% increase in search volume. We have a drawing and fashion in the creative sector also making our list, which I find counterintuitive in today's world where there's so much focus on careers. So very interesting trends there. Perfusion tech, 169% growth. And then we get one of my favorites over time, which is religion. I'm not particularly religious myself, but we've been watching this one grow for a long time now. And I think the way things are going in our society, this is almost a refuge, but certainly an area of great interest right now. A very rapidly rising interest. When we dove into this a while back, what we found was that interest was heavily skewed towards what I lovingly call the silver segment, of which I'm a member. That is, people are old enough that they're really not thinking about jobs when they go back for education. They're thinking about personal enrichment. You can see American Sign Language is in our other category, air traffic controller, and marine science, merchant marine, all in this in terms of our others at over 50% growth. What haven't I touched? Sterile processing tech and pharmacology on the health side, and that really rounds out our list. We have 3 in healthcare, 3 in creative, and 4 in others. So it's a much more diverse list at this level than any of the others that we've looked at. Now let's take a look at enrollment, much more concrete indicator. It's very current. We have enrollment up through spring of 2025. So it's a good indicator of what's happening in the market right now, where Google is telling us a little bit about what will happen in the market in the future, because that's where people go to look for what courses they may want to take. Here they've actually enrolled in those. Good news is we're almost back to pre-COVID levels. At the community college level, we're up 5% year over year, and we're getting within striking distance of where we were pre-COVID. We're still 500,000 students short, but one more good year and we'll be back, which is a welcome change. I remember reading these out for a few years before COVID, and they've been going down for several years before that. So it's great to see 2 or 3 consecutive years of growth. Certificate enrollment, and now we're looking at 5-year percentage growth. So what we see is a very heavy shot of career and technical education, CTE programs. 6 of these are CTE programs. Collision repair tech up 17%, electrician up 9%, commercial truck and bus driver up 8%, fire science up 8%, HVAC up 7%, and welding tech up 7%. Now I'm going to take us off a little bit, and I want to make sure I phrase this right. I'm kind of happy to see these CTE programs growing. First of all, they generally lead to good jobs. Second, we really need to attract more guys into higher ed. Most of the colleges I look at, and statistically on a national basis, we're now 60-40 male-female, and we really need that 40% of guys to step up. We need to attract more men into college. Uneducated men are troublesome in our society, and frankly, in most societies as well. So I'm glad to see the programs that are growing that have a strong appeal to men. And remember, there is nothing about this that is zero sum. There's plenty of room at most campuses for more men and more women as well. But as I say, I think we got to get those guys back to school. Tech, information technology, and cybersecurity doing very well. Medical records tech and allied health from the health sciences field also doing well. Now let's take a look at 5-year growth at the associate level. Very different picture. Cybersecurity wins in a walkaway with 19% growth. As I mentioned earlier, this is now a big program and still growing fast. Healthcare, 5 programs make the list: ultrasound tech, allied health, rad tech, health and wellness, and surge tech. All up close to 10% or more. And then we have a couple of career and technical fields: real estate, construction management, aircraft maintenance tech, and collision repair tech. Aircraft maintenance tech, if you can find somebody who'll donate a plane to, is a very good program. We've got a shortage of aircraft maintenance techs in the US, a very substantial shortage already, and a lot of folks are getting ready to retire. So it's a very expensive program to set up. Usually ends up getting funded by an airline that needs more techs at a local campus, or a private donor giving their plane. But if you can find a way to do it, very attractive program. Let's shift gears a little bit and look at bachelor's and master's. Here, we actually are almost exactly even with pre-COVID levels, up about 2% year over year. So we're getting back to where we were, and I hope to see this trend continue. Many of you may be looking at this and thinking there's a demographic cliff coming later. I would tell you I don't know. I think the data that supports that is extremely weak. We tried to replicate it, didn't find it was predictive at all of the change in enrollment. It was fine for predicting total enrollment, but you'll notice total enrollment doesn't change very much. So if you picked any large number and kept it constant for 5 years, you could predict total enrollment. It's about a 28% R squared when I literally used a random number. And there are just many factors that complicate the prediction of the number of students who will enroll in college. The economy has a big effect. Attitudes has a big effect. Unemployment rates in particular is a very strong effect. So the idea that 1 or 2% annual shift in number of students born 20 years ago is going to change enrollment in the future, the numbers just don't hold up. So I kind of look at what's really happening, and it looks pretty good to me. And if anybody would like to dive into that more, I'm happy to. We've done a fair amount of work around it, and I can't tell you I have a better prediction. What we discovered is, in part, that it's very actually difficult to predict the change in enrollment in college. But most of the primary factors are actually economic, not demographic. Now let's take a look at 5-year growth in bachelor's enrollment. Got a lot of tech here. Data science, cybersecurity, business analytics. And when I say tech, I think I would say analytics and tech, computer software engineering, and network and system administration. Health does make the list with 3 programs. We've got 13% growth in applied psychology, 12% growth in exercise psychology, and 12% growth in experimental psychology. And then we have our random programs, project management and sports communication. Now, we really could have classified project management back into tech. A lot of this project management is for things like data science projects, business analytics to a lesser degree, but all sorts of analytical projects and software development that gets lumped under project management. As you look at masters, you see a continued trend on data science, business analytics. IT comes up again. All these are growing over 20% a year at the master's level. Mental health, and then we really shift gears then to health. We have a very strong representation of health with 6 programs. Mental health nurse, mental health counseling, behavioral sciences, medical and social work, applied behavior analysis, and athletic training, all up with over 10%, and in some cases much more at 19% for mental health nursing. Take a second there. I think it is difficult to bet against mental health professions, whether that's in student interest on the enrollment side or demand for those resources in the job market. We've had, as you all know, a mental health crisis, especially in our young, and you do see it rolling through our programs, again, both in terms of what students are interested in, as well as the jobs that may be available to them on graduation. And financial analytics is the last one on the list, not to leave it out, up 17%, closely related to our data science and business analytics programs as well. Now, I thought it'd be fun to take a moment and just say, okay, in a sense, we're back to the bank robbers question of where's the money? And let's look at it across several dimensions. So on the y-axis here, we have program enrollment. How big is this program? On the x-axis or vertical axis, we have the number of job postings for the program. Then we we multiplied the job postings times the average wages in each field. And that gives us a sense of what the economic opportunity is for each of those programs. Let's take a second and just understand how to read the chart. If I'm down here below this diagonal line, there are fewer job postings than graduates. If I'm up in this upper segment above the line, there are more job postings than graduates. So in effect, this means there's a shortage of graduates. Business administration, you can see it's pretty close to the line. Registered nursing, I think all of you know, well short of the number of graduates needed to fill all the jobs that are available in nursing. On average, there are 4 job postings in the US for every nurse graduating from nursing school. So I'm not sure how we're going to fix that, but it's going to have a real impact on the quality of healthcare. So it's really a program we need to find a way to attend to and break the log jams that exist both at the accreditation level, at the instructor level, where it's hard to find instructors, and importantly in clinicals. But it's going to be very important to us as a society moving forward. Then we have a cluster of smaller programs, but still very strongly economically contributing, with shortages of graduates: accounting, finance, and mechanical engineering. And then down to the left, you see cybersecurity making its way onto the chart. Allied health is pretty much in balance, almost exactly as many jobs as are graduates, and relatively small impact. There are a lot of jobs here, but they're very low wage jobs, so it doesn't have the same kind of impact that something like nursing would have, where there are both a lot of jobs and much better wages. And finally, you can see electrical engineering, relatively small program in terms of both enrollment and jobs, but very well paid. So it has a little bit larger circle in something like allied health. I hope that's helpful to you as you think about what programs where you may want to focus, where the enrollment tells you it might be big for you, and the size of the circle says if you offered it, there would be rewards for your graduates. Let's take a look at international demand. I think all of you probably know that the current environment for bringing students into the U.S. is extremely problematic, but students are giving up before they even attempt to get a visa. We've got a 47% year-over-year drop in page views for international students interested in coming to the U.S. So we've got, that's, as I say, that's well before they've actually gotten into the visa process. There are already substantially fewer of them who are interested in exploring education here in the U.S., which is really a tragedy for everybody involved. I calculated out the other day, about a $4 billion loss in net revenue to the U.S. So really big, and of course, all of that hits all of you in higher education. So a lot of revenue gone here that could have been brought into the U.S. Highest page views from origin countries. China now is in our data set, which is great. You can see that's by far the largest, almost twice the next country. I'm always surprised by who makes this list and in what order. I would not expect Nepal, for example, to be one of the top 10 countries in the world where people look for U.S. education. You can see it down here towards the bottom. Number 2 is Bangladesh. Number 3 is India. That didn't surprise me. Pakistan, not surprising. Nigeria and Ghana, though, are persistent members of the top 10 that I just honestly wouldn't have expected, probably should have, but didn't know enough to do that. And we have Turkey, the UK, and Japan rounding out our list of the top 10. So what is growing? Despite all that negativity, there are programs at the bachelor's level that are growing, led by criminal justice. You can see general studies is up, environmental studies is up. I'm surprised to see electrical engineering so far down the list, although it is still in the top 10. And then you can see exercise science breaking into the top, which wasn't here a year or two ago. Design and visual communications, engineering general, biology. And again, I don't recall ever seeing music performance hit the top 10 before. So an interesting new entrant. At the master's level and PhD, it's a much more difficult picture. There are no growing programs. The decline in search volume, the lowest level is for chemical engineering, down 21%, and it just gets worse from there. So a very sharp decline across all programs. Even the best of them are seeing 20% or higher drops. Now, let's shift gears and look away from student demand and begin to think about what's going on in the job market. So job postings, chart much like our earlier one, the medium blue is last year, the light blue is this year. And year over year, we're down 9% this month. Now, that's not great news for the U.S. economy, but let's remember that people tend to go to school when they don't have a job. So the best predictor of the next year's enrollment is the change in the unemployment rate. If the unemployment rate goes up, enrollment goes up. If the unemployment rate goes down, enrollment goes down. So while this is not good news for our economy, it is good news for higher education. And we are seeing a drop. It's been pretty persistent. We had one exception in September, which I believe was some sort of a data anomaly. But you can see it's been down really all year. And it's continuing its fall in November. Fastest growing job postings. For some reason, payroll clerks hit the top this month. I have no idea why. Then we have recreation workers in our other category. Only a couple of health jobs made our top 10 in percentage growth, physical therapists and nursing assistants. Then we have good growth in trades, truck drivers, security guards, and real estate agents. And finally, a couple of STEM jobs, industrial engineers and computer systems analysts. Again, a very diverse list in terms of job postings by occupation, ranging from really high-level industrial jobs to truck drivers. Which skills are people looking for? Ops is suddenly present on these lists. This is a couple of months we've seen it. operational excellence, automation, business operations, safety standards, regulatory compliance and logistics, all hitting our top 10. We do have healthcare, infection control, childbirth, and long-term care. And then finally, one analytics skill, making the top 10, which is general analytics. So again, we're beginning to see a very strong demand for operations skills in the U.S. That could be the building of factories that have onshored. Certainly has the prevalence of AI construction, not necessarily AI itself, but the facilities required is going to drive those needs. And then after that, I'm not sure why, but that is not what we would have seen on these charts just as recently as, say, a year ago. 12 days of program ideas. So now we're going to talk about individual programs that we think have promise, some of which were part of our 5 emerging programs in the past. This was one of our emergers. I'm sorry, how do we get to these programs? We look at a whole variety of information. This is qualitative. I'm sure we look at completions, but many emerging programs don't even have a zip code yet. So they're not in IPEDS. They are not necessarily fitting neatly into even an occupational code. So again, lots of different sources, whether that's something like AI investments, private equity funds, and spending by the federal government through DARPA programs. There's a range of different things we look at to try and identify things that may be coming out as important in the future. Number 1 on this list is a bachelor's in business analytics. This has been we started mentioning this as an emerging program in about, I think the first time I really brought this up was in 2015, and it's been roaring ever since. Unfortunately, it does cannibalize people from your business program, but even that's managed to sustain, and this has been a nice growth opportunity for many schools. Well paid, I might add. HVAC, very different program, also doing very well. It's been a good traditional program. We've had relatively good trends in the construction market for a long time. And we saw a rapid jump in enrollment in the last year from 11,200 to 14,000 students. Lots of jobs, 99th percentile in terms of number of jobs out there. Undergraduate underemployment is high, but you don't need a college degree for this, which is why it's hitting here. And we're probably, you do need usually a certificate, or you need to have gone through an apprenticeship program. So that's, again, a little high, but not terrible. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm misinterpreting that number. 93rd percentile. The percentile high is always good. So that's a very low underemployment rate for HVAC. Post-entry median wages, 65,000, 69th percentile, very healthy wages. And the program sizes are good, 15 graduates per year per program. Completely different program, psychiatric nursing. So we've gone from the HVAC system into the psychiatric department of the hospital. 97th percentile compared to all other master's programs, well paid at $100,000 approximately. One of the top 3% of programs, 97th percentile. Post-entry median pay, $117,000. So once they're settled in on their job, after 3 years, they do better, and up to $117,000. Very few people who end up with a degree in psych nursing don't and do work that doesn't require a college degree. So low underemployment rate of 10%. They're all, 90% of them are going to become nurses. And completion volume year over year, up 36%. We talked about a little bit earlier. Enrollment up 23%. So both ends of the funnel, if you will, the beginning and the end, are growing quite rapidly. Now we've got applied AI, and this is taking AI tools and combining with domain knowledge in a specific discipline to create a tool that is custom for that discipline. And we're finding that this is increasingly important, even in something as general as an AI tutor, which you can do out of the box with a traditional AI model like Google Gemini. but even then, you run into very specific things that are needed if you're going to support, for example, math. You need the ability to incorporate symbolic notations to have the student be able to enter a summation sign, for example, which is not easily available in those systems. So there's customization for that kind of issue. There's content that may be specific to a given course. And we're only talking about something relatively simple like an AI tutor. And what we're finding is that each course, each program needs customization in order to make it really useful. So that was a bit of a surprise to us. It's not that the core models can't do the work. It's just that they need to be tuned, they need guardrails, and they need a little customization to really be effective in a given discipline. That is also true in very different fields. So for example, tuning up a AI to fold proteins is not at all the same thing as having one to monitor the HVAC systems in your building. So there are a lot of interdisciplinary programs that can be built out of this to focus on particular industries, functions, or field of research. And the general knowledge is applicable across almost everything in our society right now. So it's going to be an interesting thing as the degree of specificity of AI applications begins to increase over time. And I should mention there, you notice there were no completions. This is not yet something that exists really in iPads. So there are a handful of programs that are offered, but it's early days for this, and it's not tracked through most of your traditional systems. Doctorate in law, this one is tracked. We've got new enrollment up 4%, huge Google search volume, the largest master's program at almost 3,800 completions a year. Median program size is very healthy at 168. And BLS current employment is way up there. I'm a history grad, and this is what most history graduates go on to do. Not most, 15% of them. It's the largest single occupation for history grads. And you can see it's very well paid as well. Other end of the spectrum, dental hygiene. Big field, 100,000 people employed. Almost 14,000 job postings last year. Very little underemployment. Median salary is good at 73,000. Median program size is good at 19. The other thing that's really interesting about dental hygiene is one of the few jobs that you can do part-time and raise a family, for example. And still get paid a decent wage. So it's an interesting program from that perspective as well. It's changing dramatically in terms of who hires graduates. It used to be your local dentist. Now, most of the hiring, the last time we looked at this, was concentrated in a handful of national players like Bright Smile and so forth that were competing against the local dentist, offering national scale. So it's an industry that's changing pretty fast, but still plenty of jobs for hygienists. Computational social science. This is using numbers primarily derived from social media to analyze and predict behavior in our society. So lots of data required, very advanced computational methods, machine learning in particular, to try and predict behaviors in society as a whole. I suspect this is going to get down scarily enough to trying to predict individual behaviors, in particular behaviors that may be a risk to others. But who knows who'll get caught up in that if we start. Creator economy, this is folks making stuff and selling it from their home. God bless them. It is very popular. It is also very risky. And the average pay for folks that do this doesn't make minimum wages. So it's got a lot of sex appeal right now, but it's a very dangerous thing to go into for somebody starting out, unless they have a real gift for it. Very likely not to make a whole lot of money. But by the way, not a bad thing to do as a gig between jobs. So there's certainly a role for it. And if you're successful, it can be terribly lucrative. But it worries me how many people think they're going to be an influencer and a creator. I think there's many fewer of those that are going to prosper than will try it out. You see some new programs, BA in digital media influencer certificate. I think the way to go for this for a profession, though, is to go into marketing firms and do the social media marketing within a more corporate environment. an MA in artificial intelligence. This is super popular. And just an example of what you can do with it. This is an evaluation of a program done entirely by an AI looking at our data. So things that were just impossible 3 years ago are now possible. We can mass produce, or really in this case, custom produce a written report in about 60 seconds. Science of well-being. I think this one has legs in our society. There's so much of an issue around well-being, and there are programs being launched in this space. It is the most popular course on Coursera, with 5 million people enrolled as of October 2025. Over the past, that's not in October, that is over the last few years prior to October 2025. There are more specific analytical, I would call them, academic disciplines associated with this. You see the Master's in Applied Positive Psychology and a Health and Wellness Coaching Certificate. So there are ways to incorporate this where it's not just feel good. There's rigorous academic material behind it. Okay, this is our most disgusting idea we've come up with. So far, this is manufacturing meat and doing it in food from a cellular level. So essentially, instead of having a cow stand in the field and eat grass to fatten it up, you're taking tissues and growing that same meat in a test tube. Okay, I'm pretty flexible about what I eat, but this really doesn't appeal to me. But it is a growing field. I think it's a very exciting field. It has lots of environmental benefit. Just don't make me eat the output. Bachelor's in architecture, including big business tech. This one surprised me. I thought architecture was pretty small, but it's really not. It gets a 98th percentile on our scoring. Median program size is very healthy at 44. Lots of international interest, although obviously that's getting hit right now. Current employment is strong at 53,000. That's a 95th percentile. And you can see there are all sorts of different occupations people go into. And here again, it's more than just architecture. You can see we've got people in here doing interior design, multimedia animation, web development. I ran into a few people when I was working around web design that had started out as architects and were applying some of the same conceptual skills to architecting websites. Let me summarize for you. In November, Google searches for academic programs fell 29%, but most of that, I suspect, is the changeover from AI to from traditional Google search. Registered nursing led the list. Economics was the highest at the transfer above levels, but remember that AI issue. Community college enrollment grew very healthily, 5%. We're getting back towards pre-COVID levels in both cases. From 2019 to 2025, the fastest average annual enrollment by award level is taken by IT, at the associate level by cybersecurity, and at the bachelor's and master's level by data science. However, the job market is dropping. The U.S. economy appears to be slowing according to our data. I think 2 days ago, we got a report out from the government that the unemployment rate is beginning to tick up. And there's a parallel article I read that the unemployment rate actually may be ticking up a good deal faster than we're seeing because of a couple of anomalies in the reporting structure. So I think we're in for a difficult period economically. And I hate to cheer the U.S. economy being poor, but that's good for higher ed. So last but not least, don't forget to register for our 5 Emerging Programs webinar coming up on 2 p.m. on January 15th. It's really a lot of fun. Lots of new ideas in there that you'll get to share, and we'll also share a recap of what's been growing over the last decade or so. Thank you all very much for joining us this afternoon, and look forward to speaking with you again next month.
Just want to open things up for any questions if anyone has them. We have a few minutes left here. I see one raised hand. Reese, do you have a question? Okay. I think we're all good and ready to start our holidays. Thank you so much for attending.
And have a wonderful holiday.